It's not every day you wake up to the start of a new month. September is sure to bring its best for you if you will make a few changes here and there and stop to see how far you've come. Welcome to another Thursday edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson. Today's show is filled with exciting stops and interesting features on a powerful transformative tool that can change the world. It is one of the pillars of sustainable development and our Vision 2030 National Development Goals. Can you guess what we're talking about today? Here's a clue from our first national hero, the Right Honourable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who said these words: "Never forget that intelligence rules the world and ignorance carries the burden. Therefore, remove yourself as far from ignorance as possible and seek as far as possible to be intelligent." We'll be right back.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Thursday, September 1, 2022. Government will be moving to expand the size and types of plastic bags banned from use in Jamaica. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Matthew Samuda, made the announcement on Tuesday during a virtual plastic forum. He says this has become necessary as more businesses try to circumvent the current regulations.
We have seen persons who have gone right outside of the regulations on plastic bags. So they've gone a little thicker or a little larger, trying to use plastic instead of paper-based and recyclable alternatives or reusable alternatives. That means we're going to have to move the goalpost, and that move will come this year.
On January 1, 2019, a ban was placed on specific categories of single-use plastics. As it regards plastic bags, it prohibits the importation, manufacture, and use of bags 24 by 24 inches in dimension and 1.2 mil or less in thickness. Minister Samuda says government will be moving to increase the types as well as band size, both in terms of dimensions and thickness.
So for all of those who may be online now listening to us and contemplating their next round of purchases, I would suggest strongly to you that you look at the recycling alternatives, because you will get stuck with goods. And the minimum order quantities for these sorts of things, you will have months of goods put down. And that increase in size is coming and coming fast.
He says government will also look at expanding the ban to include plastic lunch containers, so these too can be removed from the waste stream. Minister Samuda says the necessary consultations will be done with the various private sector bodies to ensure there is enough notice so the policy change does not cause displacement in the market. Currently, there is a ban on the local manufacture, distribution, and use of expanded polystyrene foam products used in the food and beverage industry. The Jamaica Customs Agency, JCA, is strengthening its anti-corruption awareness to combat the practice across all levels of its operation. At a semi-virtual panel discussion on Wednesday, Senior Director of Legal Affairs, Hazel Edwards, said such actions must have legal consequences to achieve the desired results for Jamaica.
If persons are engaged in acts of corruption, there must be effective and forceful prosecution. And prosecution without fear or favor. And it means that if persons at the top are engaged in those actions, then they should be prosecuted.
According to Ms. Edwards, the JCA has been working with a number of agencies, such as the Tax Administration Jamaica, Financial Investigations Division, and the Integrity Commission. But she says there needs to be greater collaboration with regards to information sharing and analysis of data that will lead to apprehensions. The Public Procurement Commission, PPC, is now able to review and approve public procurement submissions from government ministries, departments, and agencies in less than 2 weeks. The Commission is also able to process supplier registrations in less than a week. That announcement comes from Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark. It follows the PPC becoming the 24th public entity in Jamaica to earn ISO 9001-2015 quality standard. Speaking at a recent celebratory event for the certification, Minister Clark said it was in line with government's efforts to reform the public procurement system through a data-driven and evidence-based process.
The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service is undertaking a data-intensive process where we will be retrieving information from over 27 variables in procurement, economic efficiency, regulatory compliance, efficiency with respect to time, etc., and pursue a data-driven approach towards revising the procurement system.
The upgrade of the procurement system is being supported by a grant of over $1 million from the government of the United States. The Urban Development Corporation, UDC, is advanced in the development of a resilience park in Portmore, St. Catherine. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says ground will be broken this year for the park, which is to be developed on 25 acres of land.
Funding is in place, the designs are being finalized. It will be a magnificent park.
The Prime Minister was speaking at a groundbreaking ceremony in Portmore for the construction of the Sandown Palms housing development. He says Emancipation Park in the corporate area will act as a standard for the Resilience Park's construction and maintenance.
NHT spends quite a bit of its resources in maintaining the park and keeping it in pristine condition. We're going to do the same thing now in Portmore. A massive investment it will be in a park so that the people of Greater Portmore can have this high quality recreational space.
The Resilience Park is among the infrastructure projects for Jamaica's 60 celebrations and will coincide with preparations to declare Portmore the island's 15th parish. And finally, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Olivia Grange, says the recently unveiled Mexico-Jamaica Friendship Mural is now a must-see attraction for visitors arriving on the island. The full-color mural, titled Reignited for Unity and measuring 49 feet by 167 feet, was officially unveiled at the CEMEX complex in Rockfort recently. It was jointly created by artists Irving Cano Gomez and Freddy Ramirez Herrera from Mexico, along with Jordan Harrison, Anthony Smith, and Unique Yip from Jamaica.
The creative work illustrates the strong cultural and artistic traditions of both Jamaica and Mexico and depicts a Jaguar man, a powerful representation of Mexican Aztec culture, presenting his heart to a beautiful singing Jamaican female, representative of the beauty and the spirit of our people and our Jamaican music.
The work is an extension of the Culture Ministry's ongoing Paint Up Your Creative Space mural project. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
September is National Literacy Month. Reading opens the imagination and activates critical thinking as new learning pathways are formed in the brain. Find out more about the power of reading.
Have you ever curled up with a good book? Do you have a favorite story? Many of us do, but sadly, 750 million people worldwide are not able to read. That's according to UNESCO. And many children have never had the joy of a book being read to them. This has to end because literacy matters, and being literate changes lives by changing hearts.
Good morning. My name is Miss Laddie, and I'm going to read you a story today. The name of the story is Peachy. Peachy is about the sweetest little peach. Do you know what a peach is? Who can tell me what a peach is? It's a fruit.
Did you know that every year the first Tuesday in September is celebrated worldwide as International Literacy Day, and right here in Jamaica, the entire month of September is dedicated to literacy awareness? Here's why.
We find that one day is not sufficient to bring an awareness of what literacy really means. We have a month-long activities that are slated for the island where students and teachers are engaged in various activities. Such activities include a monthly project that the students will be involved in, It also involves read a book per day, write a passage per day, and also wear a word per day.
And there's more.
Teachers and parents are urged to help children develop an appreciation for literacy, what it can do for their personal growth and for national and global development.
But what exactly is literacy, and why is it so important?
Literacy is the ability to read, write, and to compute. But in the 21st century, literacy has demanded more competency skills than it used to before. These skills include comprehending and decoding through text and visual aids. So the child's ability to comprehend and understand what he reads.
The importance of reading is very fun. It builds up my brain and it builds up my school level.
Literacy is as important as food, because in order to be a functional member of society, you have to be literate.
It's important to be literate, one, so we can read for joy and make our lives a happier life, and also so that we can function properly in the world when we're an adult, filling out applications and being successful otherwise in life.
Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, numerous adjustments had to be made this year to encourage literacy among students who were away from the physical classroom. Students were encouraged by the Education Ministry to use various platforms at home to read stories, write poems, and express themselves through creative expression. If and when they need a break from reading within the confines of their homes, rest assured they could and still can visit their nearest public library to enjoy their favorite story.
The St. James Parish Library has been strictly adhering to the COVID protocol set out for protecting the users as well as staff members. And staff members designated and is assigned to ensure that persons are sanitized, their temperatures are checked, and they are wearing their masks upon reaching the library. In addition to that, we have also been very mindful of the social distancing, and we reorganized the library so that there are less chairs, less tables, and more space. In addition, the highly touched surfaces are sanitized on a regular basis.
So, as you can see, even though the country is tackling a global pandemic, literacy continues. In fact, literacy is even more important because there is a greater need to know and be in the know.
Just imagine a world in which everyone is able to read. Sounds impossible? Yet it isn't. We all have to play our part in helping each other become literate so that each of us can in time find our favorite story.
The ladder of success is often defined by those who keep going up, like those in our public sector who continue to lead transformation. Today we'll hear about one from our education sector.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, Dr. Chu, how are you doing?
I am fine, thank you.
I see that you're fine. I see that you're fine.
I am headed out though.
I see that. Well, we'll head out with you.
Okay.
So you can get ready, and we definitely will just be having a quick chat.
All right,
So
so
you
give
can-
me a minute. I'll go and get my stuff.
You know what happened? I'll be following you.
All right, no problem.
I'll come with you. Dr. Chu, I know that everybody starts their day in a particular way.
Yes.
What would you say are your morning rituals, the things that you must do?
I'm an early bird. I get up early every morning. By 5 o'clock I am up and I listen to my morning inspiration. So I turn on my phone to Nationwide and get the morning spiritual inspiration. And then most times, not all the times, I go jogging with my husband to get my exercise in.
Tell us, what do you do?
Education is really about life, living, and my task really is to ensure we operate a smooth, effective education system that will enable our boys and girls to be their best selves. I have the best job in the world, but the most difficult.
Tell me the most difficult decision you've had to make this week, and you could probably share what the decision was.
Wow, I make tough decisions every day, especially when it comes down to resources, making the best use of resources for our country. Now, just yesterday, we have been meeting with the World Bank because we're looking at an education mission, and we have to decide on how to utilize the limited resources to treat with some capacity building for our teachers. Now, you know that the education system cannot surpass the quality of its teachers, but we have teachers in service and we have teachers who are considered pre-service. Now, I've had to make the decision with respect to who gets the resources. Do we improve the teachers who are being trained, or do we treat with those teachers who are currently in service? Now, that was most difficult because both categories of teachers are important to the transformation.
Dr. Choub, there are different things that inspire individuals. Who or what has inspired you lately?
You know, I'm really inspired by those with whom I work with and those that I serve. When the students do well in their areas of talent, when I watch the Boys and Girls Championship, when I watch the scholarship ceremonies, when I watch the students in their dance form and their art forms, that really and truly inspires me.
What is Dr. Choub's legacy in the public sector? What would that be? What does that sound like? What does that look like?
Wow, that's a big one. Really, what I would love to know at the end of my tenure as a leader, that all our educational institutions are performing above satisfactory. Now, that's a difficult task, but it is not impossible. Right now, I have 243 schools that are deemed unsatisfactory, and I am committed to seeing those schools move to satisfactory and then take them to good and excellent. That's the legacy I want to leave, because that means students are getting the best education program possible and getting the opportunity to become the best persons that they can be.
I'm sure with the demands of your job, you travel different places, you go different places. What's the most interesting place that your job has taken you to?
You know, I've been to China and I've looked at their education system as part of a study tour. And what was most impressive for me is the discipline of the students. Now, I got a chance to see the teachers moving away from the classroom into a planning session, and the students moved into self-directed learning. I'm really hoping for the day that we can see that happening in Jamaica, where our students can take self-directed learning to another level. That is going to be very, very important to maximizing and learning time and extending the learning support that our boys and girls need to become their best selves. So that's something that I found interesting, and I'm moving for that to be a part of Jamaica's education system.
Can you say anything in Chinese?
Xie xie. It means thank you. I learned that. That's the only thing I could say over there.
Recommend one book that you'd want everyone to read.
Well, you know, when I got the opportunity to lead the sector at this level, I figured I needed to improve in my leadership. So John C. Maxwell is one of my favorites. And so How to Lead Successfully, The 5 Levels of Leadership, that's a book that I'm reading. Now, to be honest with you, I don't get the chance to do it as much as I want, but I get to put in a few pages each night to examine my own style of leadership and how I can become better. Because to move this system is not about your positional power. It's really about the influence and how persons believe in your capacity to deliver and what that does for them. That's very important, and that's part of the levels of leadership that I'm taking myself on, and I will recommend that as a good book for any leader, because the truth is everything falls and rises on leadership.
Dr. Troop, this is where we say, have a great day, and as you learned, share.
Thank you too, and I'm late for my meeting. Bye.
Up next, we reflect on the Kendal train crash of 1957.
On September 1, 1957, a recreational passenger train set out on its return leg from Montego Bay to Kingston, but never got there. The Holy Name Society, a fraternity of the St. Anne's Roman Catholic Church, had reserved coaches on the train for a fundraising excursion to Montego Bay. The youth were encouraged to spread the word.
Going to Montego Bay for a day at the beach was a big deal, so we were recruited to sell tickets to our colleagues. So I was one of those, and I had myself a little group. I think I might have sold maybe in the region, maybe 20, 25 tickets.
The records indicate that all told just over 350 tickets were sold, among them some 60 children. The train was scheduled to leave the Kingston train station for Montego Bay at 5:30 a.m.
I remember we got there was a lot of excitement. But one thing we discovered when we got there is that the numbers, because the target was 750 people. But when we got there, the count was in the region of 1,000. So I remember Father Eberly, who was in charge, he had to arrange with the railway to get 2 extra coaches put on.
The train was waylaid by throngs at its Spanish Town and Maypen stops, and by the time it got to Porus, its passenger numbers grew dangerously high. Closer to 1 that afternoon, engines 90 and 95 pulled safely into the Montego Bay train station.
We had a mass, and after the mass, then we went over to the beach, and everybody did their own thing after that.
It was just a fun day. And of course, youngsters, young boys, young girls, frolicking, basically, that was it. So just a nice picnic atmosphere. And we had a great time, no doubt about that.
The train was supposed to have left out at 6 o'clock the evening.
When we got back to the train station, there was a similar problem to what had happened in Kingston, in that the numbers had increased, or there wasn't any chance now of getting additional coaches.
The coaches were overrun with hangers-on, and people decided to ride how they could.
A lot of people were also on that connecting place between the 2 coaches. You know, where they have where that platform that connects the 2 coaches, not inside the coach, but outside.
Kingston was 140 miles away, and along the railway route were the difficult ascents at Cambridge and the S-Bend near Kendal, Manchester. 10:45 p.m., 4 hours into the train ride, and most had forgotten how the journey began. Engines 90 and 95 were laboring in a 15-mile-per-hour climb towards Williamsfield to descend for rest at the Kendal train station.
I remember we were singing some choruses. I don't remember exactly what, but I remember we were singing. Swing low. Suddenly, we felt the train speeding up. And you sort of stopped in midstream to look up and wonder what's happening.
It was picking up speed coming down the grade until all of a sudden I hear a rambling, rung, 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 didn't know what it was, and it lasted for a couple seconds well.
Then we heard the whistle blowing. And normally when the whistle is blowing, it means something. Something is coming on the line. The driver is giving a warning or something. And then after we heard the whistle, then, everything just went berserk.
I just felt a sudden jolt. and that jolt probably catapulted us up into a sort of 30, 45 degree angle like this.
We had the sensation of flying in through the air. I remember this distinctly. By the time we were on the floor, because we would have been thrown from wherever we were, and we were being tossed around in the coach. And we hit the ground, and you sort of held on to whoever was closest to you. There was a thought, now, are you going to live or are you going to die? Because that thought does come into your mind. And I remember we prayed, you know, in the interim, very quick prayers. We were there on the floor, and then suddenly we came to a stop. Then silence for a while. Then, of course, everything broke loose.
The flooring of the coach was tearing away, so I jumped through the window. When I got out and realized I had jumped through the window, I landed on all fours. I said, Auntie Gloria is still up there. So when I climbed up back to get her down, she was sort of horse and saddle over the window, trying to follow me. So I got one foot over my shoulder and got her down.
Keith and I and several of the others, we came through the windows. I walked gingerly down, and then of course you saw all these broken coaches all over the place. You heard people moaning, you heard people crying, and of course it was just pandemonium.
A lot of people dropped down through the floor of our coach, through the roof of the one below it, and probably, I don't know, probably down to the line. All I know, there were a lot of people down there bawling for help. All weren't dead.
The records show that some 200 train passengers numbered among the dead. They were strewn in a wet red potato field under the full moon, just past milepost 57 near Kendal, Manchester. Dawn magnified the horror.
I remember just at daybreak we came out, and there was this long line of people. And I remember also vividly that while we were there, you had this long line of corpses just sitting, laying there, and people walking, you know, to see if they recognized anybody. And I remember we went and we took a look right down the line. Just one look to see if we saw anybody that he recognized, and then that was it. We just couldn't do any more.
The dead were buried in a mass grave alongside the deadly rail they rode.
Are you or your children heading back to school? Maybe you're not a parent, but you're pursuing your own personal development by getting an education. Either way, Jamaica Magazine is here to keep you informed about so many educational opportunities available. You can find more content like this on our website at jis.gov.jm. Also, send us your feedback about today's show or any of our programs to jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm. Be sure to join us again tomorrow when we'll bring you another informative program. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thank you so much for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.